Thanks for tuning in to Murder News, the true crime cult for the latest breaking news, murdery memes, TV reviews, podcast recommendations, and all things spooky. You might be thinking to yourself that you recently watched the NXIVM documentary and that cults are very, very bad and dangerous. Well, we can't disagree with you there, but just know that with our cult, we really just want to sit around in our PJs, maybe pet some baby goats, and watch Forensic Files on repeat. I'm television's Aurora Katie.
And I'm your online murder friend, Angelina. Cults are no fun alone, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell all of your true crime friends to join the commune at murder.news. This is the Week in True Crime.
Murder News.
26-year-old Brandy Odom is the victim at the center of one of New York City's most famous unsolved murders. Brandy's body was found dismembered and scattered around Brooklyn's Canarsie Park in 2018. New York City authorities had few leads and next to no updates on the case in the weeks and months that dragged on after Brandy's murder. The victim's family was very disappointed in how the case was handled. Her mother, Nicole Odom, expressed her dissatisfaction that the police department never followed up or checked in on the family after they, quote, found a whole dismembered body in the park. Brandy was described as having goals and a game plan, being motivated and having potential before she was robbed of her life. But because she was a young Black woman and a sex worker, her loved ones felt her case never got the attention it deserved. Well, this week they finally got some good news, as 33-year-old Corey Martin and 32-year-old Adele Anderson were arrested by FBI agents last Wednesday. The couple were Brandy Odom's roommates, but the depth of the trio's relationship was revealed through uncovered text messages. It seems Martin was operating a prostitution ring, and both Odom and Anderson called him Daddy in their text exchanges. Martin and Anderson have also been charged with wire fraud and aggravated identity theft in connection with Brandy's murder. These charges arise out of a scheme to fraudulently obtain several life insurance policies in the name of Brandy Odom, murder her, and then claim benefits under the life insurance policies, Assistant U.S. Attorney Tanya Hajar wrote in court papers. The fraudulent insurance policies totaled $200,000. Phone records show Adele Anderson posing as the victim's sister and trying to cash in on said policies after her death, first suggesting that Brandy died by suicide, then homicide, but being rejected at every turn because she didn't have access to the death certificate, coroner's report, or any funeral details. The case against Corey Martin includes witness statements about him loading black garbage bags into his truck, allegedly containing Ms. Odom's body parts. Martin was also seen buying a saw at Home Depot, and while Anderson insists she only helped with the cleanup, she spoke about watching Martin strangle the victim and dismember the body with a saw. The crime was premeditated, gruesome, and motivated by greed, explains Tanya Hajar, and reflected Mr. Martin's utter disregard for human life. Corey Martin remains in custody without bail, and Adele Anderson, who is expected to be released on a $200,000 bond this week, will be required to stick to a curfew, submit to a drug test, and wear a GPS monitor until the trial. The two could face up to 20 years in prison if convicted.
If you're into true crime, there's a good chance you've already listened to podcasts like Dr. Death, Dirty John, This Is Actually Happening, Over My Dead Body, Man in the Window, and Cold. If you haven't listened to these podcasts, stop what you're doing right now, and we've just booked your next month of entertainment. All of these shows and so many more are hosted by podcast network Wondery, which might get its very own true crime podcast made about its CEO and founder, Hernan Lopez, who is currently facing federal corruption charges. Lopez launched Wondery 4 years ago after he was inspired by the true crime podcast Serial, and has since become one of the largest podcast publishers nationwide. Prior to starting Wondery, Lopez had been the head of Fox International Channels, owned by 21st Century Fox. When he founded Wondery, he received financial backing from Fox and other investors. Now, two former Fox TV executives, Lopez and Carlos Martinez, have been charged with money laundering and wire fraud in connection with a long-running government investigation into alleged bribery and corruption in international soccer. According to the LA Times, the U.S. Attorney in East District of New York alleged that Lopez and Martinez used bribes to gather confidential information during the bidding for broadcast rights to the 2018 and 2022 World Cup tournaments and made annual payments of millions of dollars to South American soccer officials in exchange for the broadcasting rights. Ryan L. Corner, special agent in charge of the IRS, has stated their schemes included the use of shell companies, sham consulting contracts, and other concealment methods to disguise the bribes and kickback payments. Both Lopez and Martinez face maximum penalties of 20 years in prison if found guilty. The charges were filed in March, and Lopez has since pleaded not guilty. Lopez has been quoted as saying, "I'm completely confident that when I have the chance to go before a jury, if it gets to trial, I'll be vindicated." He has also stated that the charges have not played a role in his standing at the company, and he has no intention of stepping down. "I poured my heart and soul into this company that I built from the ground up, and I intend to do it for as long as I can and for many years," he said. "We'll be keeping an eye on this story as it is very relevant to our interests." Wondery has housed some of our favorite shows, but they also found themselves in a bit of trouble with fans when the former Wondery host Mike Bidet of Sword and Scale made an incredibly offensive post on International Women's Day of 2019. Mike chose to celebrate Women's Day by making the following post, which we edited, saying, "I don't understand, ableist word. See you next Tuesdays. Maybe I should take one apart to see how it works." Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
They took their good old time, but Wondery did end up firing their trash bag of a human host days after they briefly defended him. We've linked to our LA Times sources and an article for further information by our writer, Noelle Hanukkah. We want to hear your thoughts on this case in the comments below, or maybe just let us know your favorite serial-style true crime podcast.
This week, we're watching Trial 4 on Netflix, which just premiered on Wednesday. The 5-part series covers the story of Sean Ellis, who was arrested at the age of 19 in 1993 for allegedly killing a Boston police officer. The evidence against Ellis was weak from the beginning, and after 3 trials, his conviction was overturned in 2015. The documentary series dives in as Ellis faces his 4th trial for the murder of John Mulligan and fights to prove his innocence while exposing police corruption and systemic racism. This unfortunately feels all too similar to Curtis Flowers' case. We highly recommend watching Trial 4 on Netflix, and if you've already watched, let us know your thoughts on Sean's story in the comments below.
We are so excited to have Kate and V with us from this week's favorite podcast, Tipsy Mysteries. Tipsy Mysteries discusses the different mysteries that keep them up at night, all while being tipsy. V and Kate, thank you so much for joining us. How are you both doing?
Thank you so much for having us on. Pretty good. Not too shabby, considering everything.
Yeah, and y'all, we're recording this right now. You all will be watching this a week later, but today is Friday of election week, and we still don't know who the president is, and things are a little chaotic. So you in the future already know, but we are still very intense.
Tell us what it's like, please.
Yes.
You're living in
Send
wine.
us a message. And we have drinks.
Exactly. Perfect.
Well, from listening to both of you, it's so clear that you're so close and you have such a great friendship. How did the two of you meet, and what inspired you to start your podcast together?
Ooh, so we actually used to work together, and then we actually dated for a little bit. And then we're like, wait, I think we're better as best friends.
I feel like we bring that up a lot too.
We do.
A nice inside joke about us.
And I would always tell V about spooky stories because I'd have a constant need to give my friends fun facts until finally we were like, you know what? Let's copy every other single millennial and let's start a podcast. Because we ourselves think we're funny. I don't know if anyone else does. But as long as we do, we're fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so V, if you have anything to add with that.
You pretty much summed it all up. You pretty much said, let's do this. And I was like, okay, I'm in.
Well, V, Dish, what is it like working together and having this podcast together after dating?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, we I think we realized early on that we worked better as friends. And since we worked together after we broke up, it was like, well, we got to figure this out too. And I think that we kind of were able to bond over our true crime and paranormal stories as a way to like help us get over that awkward phase.
Yes.
Because that happened
definitely helped.
That definitely helped happen like after we like were trying to be friends again. So it was really good. Like this brought us closer together.
Yes.
So great dating somebody that was into like true crime and sort of spooky things, because I have never had that pleasure. And like my partner like looks at me like, what am I thinking watching scary things before bed and like whatever. So I love that. Yes.
And like that's how I end up dating a lot of people, is like they're like, you're really into spooky things, and I'm like, hey.
Yeah. I love it. So what is your spooky origin? Was there a murder in your hometown, a ghost story that's always haunted you? Like what got you into this in the first place?
So I know with me, I've been interested in the paranormal since I can remember. And so as a kid, I was like watching as much Ghost Adventures and Unsolved Mysteries as I possibly could, if you get away with, nightmares and all the good stuff. And so that kind of just carried over as I got older. And it wasn't until I got older that I actually met more people who were also into that. So we both live in Utah. A lot of LDS people here do not want to hear that. Like just, you don't talk about it around them. So it took me a while to actually find people that were also interested in it. And so just when I did, it was like, oh my gosh, there's people I can talk to about this. This is awesome.
Awesome.
So, but yeah, B's more, I think you've been interested more in true crime than I have. Because I like learning about it. I just don't know as much about it.
I feel like for me personally with like paranormal things, I've always been very sensitive to it. And so I was don't want to go near that. I'm just going to let it do its own thing on its own side. And it wasn't until like Kate really told me a bunch of stories, I was like, this is really interesting. I want to meet some ghosts.
Yes.
And then for my true crime rabbit hole that I went down, it took a lot of me hearing about Ted Bundy, because I grew up in Florida and then I moved to Utah, and I was like, what a coincidence. It was a road trip to Washington where I was listening to my cousin's true crime podcast that they were listening to. And it was just, the case was just so crazy. And I just couldn't stop after that. I had to learn all of these other things. And I think it was months of talking about Ted Bundy to Kate that let's just make a podcast.
Right.
You're already talking about this. Might as well record it.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, I really love that you kind of have a big band of things that you cover. So you do true crime, you do paranormal. I really loved the recent episode that you had, I think this past week, on Titanic ghosts.
Yes.
And also, that was so good. I love that. And also the episode on Harold the doll. So fascinating. And out of all of the cases you've covered, out of all the ghost stories you've told, which one has been your favorite to research for your show?
Oh, this one's easy. So for me, it would 100% be the Outlaw Pass incident.
Oh, yes.
I went into that one. I'm like, okay, I can get this done in a single episode. It got to the point where it was like 11 pages of notes. I'm like, oh my God, this is a two-parter. I cannot. Because that one was beyond bonkers. And to really get into it, you have to like have all those little details. And like, it still makes sense, but it makes it more fun.
One of my favorites.
That one is so good.
Yeah,
I still get chills when I think about that story.
That one keeps me up at night. Don't look at crime scene photos for that one. Just
I have never looked at the photos, and we will not be showing them on here because like those kinds of photos are really hard for me. Like I will have nightmares. I'll think about it for weeks, but oh my gosh, I can't even imagine, because animals got them and
they were found after a while. It was like, because I tried not to, and then some sites just
are they like frozen too? Like it was cold. Oh yeah, I'm not looking at that. I might look at that maybe.
So here, like gruesome the details, but don't look at it.
Yes. So how about for you, V? Which case has been your favorite?
I think personally, like the one that like got me most shocked, and it wasn't even like a very detailed serial killer or anything. It was in episode 2
Oh,
about the guy who bombed Salt Lake City. And I was just very intrigued by that. And he lived super close to, or in the jail that's super close to me. So I was like, that's incredible. I didn't even realize that this was a thing that happened here. So that one was always kind of like stuck with me every time I drive past that prison. So
that one was bonkers. My gosh.
Yeah, I
yeah.
have to go back and listen to that one because I don't know that story. I just know that Salt Lake City and like Utah in general, like it's a underpopulated state for as many crimes as you all have.
That's
Yes.
very true.
Yes.
That's very true.
Some things with water. I don't know. At this
Yeah.
point.
Well, it's been such a pleasure having both of you. Can you let our viewers know where they can find you on social media?
Yes. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, all at Tipsy Mysteries. I got the handle early on, so it's simple. There we go.
Awesome. And be sure to subscribe to Tipsy Mysteries wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss a single episode.
This week on murdermurder.news, be sure to check out a new article in which our writer Andy Mao dives into the tough question of how safe is online dating. We shared her article on social media this week and got a big response from our readers sharing horror stories and love stories from online dating. We want to hear your stories too. Check out Andy's article and let us know if you ended up marrying a Tinder date or having a super close call with someone from Grindr. We want to hear it all. We love reading your comments, as long as you're not a troll, and we want to thank Victoria Ashley for commenting about the Halloween samurai attack and saying that she can't imagine the horror people must have gone through since they probably assumed he had a fake sword.
We also want to thank Book of Lies podcast for commenting that the attack must have been related to the full moon. She also said she worked in admitting at an ER and has had so many full moon stories.
Thanks so much for tuning into This Week in True Crime with Murder Murder News. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button below, give us a thumbs up, and tell all of your true crime friends.
Help support Murder Murder News by signing up for our commune at murdermurder.news, and your $5 a month sponsorship helps us keep the true crime lights on. It helps us produce our weekly show and helps us support our amazing writers to help keep you up to date with the latest breaking true crime news every day on murdermurder.news. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. See you next week.